Okay. This means being live streamed. Where is it? And we are good to go. Hey, everybody. You are watching and listening to the We Are Rizin podcast. This is your host, Andrew Benjamin. I'm joined by my very famous, handsome, and Houston Astros biggest fan, co-host, Jay Christian Gary from Focus Fights.
What's good, y'all? And of course, we are joined by Bellator fanatic and Bellator really aficionado, TeeptotheJunk of Random Acoustic Thoughts. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
But we should also, listen, Teep is now a writer, contributor to the Fight City as well. So that's, that he has that in his background. Is that correct, Teep?
Yes, that's correct. I've been doing research on the early gloved era of boxing and content. And so I split my time now, my combat sports time, between Bellator and classic boxing.
Okay,
understood. But we can talk all about the legendary Sweet Science later. Right
well,
now,
I'll say this all before Teep. When you're not talking, can you mute your microphone because I'm hearing a lot of background noise on your area.
Yeah. Okay.
So, okay. I'm sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
Yeah, but as we were trying to say, the reason why we are on so, I guess, late, so impromptu, so what have you, is because Bellator not only has a big card coming up in Moscow, Russia this weekend, October 23rd, as you're watching this right now, featuring the legendary Fedor Emelianenko taking on number 2 heavyweight contender Timothy Bigfoot Johnson. But also, if you see Andrew's graphic behind him, you will see that on December 3rd, Sergio the Phenom Pettis will defend his Bellator Bantamweight Championship of the World against the man formerly known as, and will be known in the future again as, Gucci 2 belts 2 times, Kyoji Horiguchi.
So yeah, it's funny because when I initially when you chat to Teep about this, I was like, hey, we should discuss what Kyoji Horiguchi is gonna do next for Bellator since he has signed Bellator. Bellator obviously read our tweets and was like, hey, you know what? Let's give him a title shot because he was the initial bantamweight champion. He vacated due to injury. So, let's give the guys from We Are Rizin some specific stuff to talk about. So yeah, now we got Pettis versus Kyoji official. So Teep, I want to ask you, as somebody who does rankings for Bellator, who's discerned Bellator way before they were on Showtime and a lot of stuff. What do you think about this title fight being now? So you think that do you think it is a legitimate matchup to make given Kyoji never did lose a belt. He vacated it. Or do you think that maybe he should have had to face, like one person in bantamweights, and then based on that fight, yeah, you know what? Maybe he's the next contender, because I could see arguments for both. You could say, oh, Rolfia and Stotts, undefeated, and just defeated Nurmagomedov. And soundedly, you could be the next contender. But if you want to say, hey, Horiguchi never lost a belt, he should be the one who fights for it next, I can see that as well. What do you think, Teep? Do you think this was the right fight to make?
Well, I wasn't surprised about the booking. There are two ways to see it. You could say Horiguchi is the lineal champion. He gave up the belt. He didn't lose it. And, the fight he did lose was in the ring, different rule set. So as far as the Bellator League, he is the lineal champ. And so when he vacated, Coker did say publicly that he'd be getting a shot on his return. So that makes sense. However, Stotts beating Magomedov was fantastic and really made him the top contender. In my rankings, I have Stotts number 1, but I have Horiguchi listed separately as lineal champ. So I would have been fine with either. And I think Stotts and Baby Pettis being teammates, they were both angling to have the Grand Prix and be in different brackets. So they eventually fight for the belt, but not necessarily right away. So I think all parties involved are cool with it. Plus, you don't want to risk Horiguchi getting a loss, because then that makes it really complicated, seeing as he left with the belt and he beat Caldwell and the sort of the lineage. So I do think this repairs the lineage appropriately. I love this fight. I'm going to it live. I will not miss this.
And, I might we might cross paths there, so I'll just leave it at that.
Oh
Maybe.
yeah, you being a part of the media, Teep being a fan.
Yeah, so it could happen. But if Bellator had said, "Listen, Horiguchi, you haven't fought for us, since you won the title. You haven't, we see you fought in Rizin, but you haven't fought for us. We want you to have one more fight, against, on against somebody, maybe Nurmagomedov or Jonah Hill or maybe another bantamweight on their rankings before,
Maybe
or
Rocky Dots for the
yeah, that
out
too. That too.
leadership.
Yeah. Yeah, that too as well. If they had done that, would you have been opposed to that? Or if they had given, would have just said, hey, we're gonna do Pettis versus Stotts next, and then we'll have Horiguchi, face the winner of that fight or something like that.
I would have been totally cool with it, and I'm sure Horiguchi would just fight who they ask him to fight. Because he gave up the belts initially out of sort of a sense of humility because he said, I'm injured. I don't want to tie anything up. So it wasn't like he was grasping onto it and they had to strip him. So I think, when a champion graciously gives up the belt, there's some leeway there. Just like with Patricio Pitbull giving up the lightweight belt if his brother could get that title shot. And so the Queally Pitbull rematch was elevated for the lightweight title. And it's sort of, there's politics involved, but some of these things, it's a league rather than a cross sport thing. So there's not separate sanctioning bodies. So they have that option. And as long as all the athletes involved are okay with the proceedings, I'm cool with it. So and in that case, in this specific instance, you had two good arguments for the title shot. So it came down to what do they want to do? I'm looking forward to the fight. I can't wait to see who Stotts is going to fight. He's so incredibly good. So great things happening at bantamweight. And I hopefully after this fight, they will launch the tournament. Or even better yet, they launch the tournament and this title fight is round one in one of the brackets.
So I ask, Pettis versus Horiguchi, do you think this is the right fight to make at this point? Because here's the other thing as well. And, I feel like that's a big fight to make. And I feel like having, I don't know, like what, I would almost, I don't know if Bellator or Rizin was even planning a joint show this year. I don't know if there was any talks about that, but I feel like this is a fight that you have to build up for a long time because Pettis, undefeated in Bellator has dominated everybody that they put in front of him. Horiguchi, obviously, not defeated lineal champion. I feel like this is a big fight to me. I kind of feel like they just kind of like announced it out of nowhere. Do you understand what I'm saying? I feel like, this is a fight that should have had some big hype behind it before it was just kind of like announced on social media. Does that am I wrong in thinking that, Teep? Do you understand what I'm saying as well?
I certainly get what you're saying. I mean, I'm not stressing it.
Like I like here's the thing, like so the next show, so this weekend, in between all the fights, they have Pettis, come out, say I'm the Pettis, do his whole thing, and then they announce it then rather than so. I've always had this problem with stuff that's announced on social media. I feel like it's dumb because it's almost it's I feel like you have to I feel like if they had done it live on TV, it would have more impact. Does that make sense? Kind of like, because then you have more people talking about that show as well. Because if people, if people are not paying attention to this Bellator 269 show, they're gonna start, they might start tuning in or they might start, reading stuff on social media now, then and then start, then get ready for the big show. I don't know. I feel like that's an old school wrestling thing, though. I've always been in the belief that you make big announcements during the big show, right, Chris? As a pro wrestling fan, you understand what I'm saying, right?
Exactly. I get exactly what you mean about making big announcements for the big shows that you're currently on, not making big announcements out of nowhere 3 days in advance of your next show.
Teep, do you agree with that, or are we just, is this just overthinking? This is my pro wrestling brain talking too much.
No, I mean, you're making a good point. I think, in their case, they're finding their way to penetrate the constant wave of information that's hitting fans of combat sports. And there's a lot of attention because of Fedor's fight. There's international attention on the card, and they probably just thought that would weave in a little bit, sprinkling some new amongst the old. The whole reason they have you know, a legend like Fedor there is it's not just because it's access to his incredible team, which is a large part of it, but it's also, you know, he brings the kind of attention that young guys just can't, because fans have a sense that there's only so much more Fedor we're going to get to see. So you're trying to get in there while it's still there. So I think, yeah, it was probably just that. They just tied him in the card. But I'm cool with it. I'm just happy to hear the announcement of the fight, to be honest. Just keep them coming.
So actually, if they hadn't made the announcement, what would you have said? Who do you think would have been next for Sergio Pettis? Would you have picked Horiguchi, or in your own personal rankings, would you have had somebody else?
Well, I literally like advocated for both. Like it should either be Stotts. If it isn't Stotts, it has to be Horiguchi because he has a lineal claim. So either one, I was pretty much like, if we're talking about if Horiguchi hadn't vacated the title, if he didn't have the lineal championship, then it would be Stotts. Like if I just did a sports ranking, I have Stotts in the top contender. But because of that, the specifics of that, I do have Horiguchi literally in gold in my personal rankings, in gold right under Pettis, because he's basically a title claimant. And so if they want to sort that out, that takes precedence. But as far as who has the best recent work, yeah, I would rate Stotts's long streak, including Magomedov, over Horiguchi. Not total career achievement, but as far as who has the momentum, well, Stotts has a bunch of wins in a row. Horiguchi is coming off a layoff and a spectacular revenge win. So
now I know this fight was
cool that
now that I know this fight was just announced. I mean, as of now, do you think that Sergio Pettis has Horiguchi maybe is the best bantamweight in the world that other than maybe like a Piryan or somebody else? I don't know. Those are probably the two best bantamweights in the world. What is your thoughts on this, on the matchup currently as now? Do you think that Sergio Pettis has tools to beat Horiguchi, or do you think that Gucci is he's just on another level?
Yeah, I think he has tools to beat a lot of the guys at that weight, and he's just so tricky, but Horiguchi's speed to power ratio and how dynamic he is. And now when we saw the heavy kicking game that just destroyed Asakura's legs, I mean, you have to count that in too. Like all that spinning stuff is a lot harder if your legs are being brutalized. And Horiguchi is really good at slipping, his head off the center line as he delivers those. We saw it, and it makes a big difference. If you can kick it with your absolute utmost power and not be very susceptible to counter shots, you're gonna carve up the legs. And especially if he goes with the calf kicks, because he was doing that, and they're a little bit harder to check or to do anything. They're kicking you down there on purpose, so you're not really bringing your shin up to meet it. You're getting kicked in the meat right next to it. It's a little different, and guys can train to sort of angle their leg out a little bit, maybe punish those, but it's just harder, and it doesn't necessarily gel with the lateral movement of just the general ebb and flow of their footwork in the fight. So the calf kick is very effective in the right hands or shins, as the case may be. Horiguchi, I do believe, wins, and I do believe he's going to carve up his legs a little bit, land some big punches. But maybe it's a 60-40 fight. He's not like a heavy favorite in my mind. What do you guys think?
Chris, I'll put to you first.
To be honest, even though I'm as big of a Kyoji Horiguchi fan as I am, I mean, I don't even know if this is the right fight style-wise for Kyoji Horiguchi, because he just got off of knocking out Kai Asakura back at the New Year's Eve show for Rizin last year. Unfortunately, it's been over a year. I mean, it would be almost a year since he last fought. And I don't even think this would be the right fight for him style-wise, because Kyoji is a counterpuncher. That is actually, Pettis is a counterpuncher. Kyoji hates counterpunchers because they always throw him off his game. So it would be a difficult fight for Kyoji to navigate through if it's just going to be counterpunching all through. But I think if Kyoji, keeps himself on balance and try not to get hit too much, he'll definitely win this fight.
So here's my thoughts. So looking at Pettis' record, here's the people who defeated him. Rob Font, Jussier Formiga, Henry Cejudo, Ryan Benoit, and Alex Caceres. Bruce Reloy, you might know him as. But
I think you meant to say Ryan Benoit, not Benoit, but to each their own.
yeah. So, but the people who've defeated, who successfully Pettis, and this is just going off memory, these are people who kind of like bullied Pettis in the cage, or who overpowered him and just kind of like not wrestle smothered him, but smothered him in terms of pressure and just overwhelming him. And I think that Kyoji, he's gonna have, if I think that Kyoji can adapt to any fight. Pettis has shown that he can adapt to I don't know if he can adapt to somebody like Pettis. Pettis has, look at the camp that Pettis come from, Mike Brown at the ATT, Pettis' only loss is to Kai Sakura. And that was because, don't forget, he went to that fight injured and all that stuff. So he was not physically prepared for that fight. If this is if Kyoji is 100% for this fight, mentally and physically and emotionally, I think that Kyoji can easily finish Pettis by round one. Pettis says, he looked great against Juan Archuleta and Banderas and Alfred Kashagian, but Pettis is on such another level than these people. And I just think that the problem, that Horiguchi is a fighter he's so fast, he's so explosive that unless you can match or go faster than him, you're bound to lose unless your name is DJ or obviously Kai Sakura. So, and if we even saw in the rematch, that Horiguchi adapted a game plan to beat Asakura. So I don't know. I just don't think that Pettis really has the fight acumen at this point, from what I've seen, to match with Horiguchi. That's not an insult on Pettis, but that's more of where I see Horiguchi. That makes any sense.
Understood. Teep, you got anything to add from that?
Oh, Teep, did we lose you?
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay, good.
Sorry. I was just unmuting on the phone. I was on. Yeah, I think it's a great fight. I think we should just move on to the next thing. You guys want to touch on this upcoming card? Just real
yes.
quick,
Hold on. Well, Teep, give me a second to change the logo.
I mean, obviously we can process all this, but when it comes down to this next Bellator card, it's Bellator 267 taking place from a very unfamiliar setting for Bellator, the VTB Arena in Moscow, Russia, which will happen this weekend, Saturday, October the 23rd, with a live event taking place at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, US and Canada, on Showtime and the Showtime Anytime app, with a possible late replay at like 9 p.m. Eastern or something.
I hope so, because there's no way I'm gonna remember that they're on at 3 p.m. It's not in my internal clock to think, oh, MMA is on at 3 p.m. today. It just doesn't work that way for my brain. But as you can see, unfortunately, by the cutoff heads, we have Fedor versus Big Tim Johnson, main eventing. Teep, I'll be honest. Still now, from when this fight was announced till now, I think this is a very disappointing fight. I was hoping that it would be either the rematch against Verdum, or maybe against Josh Barnett, who has not fought in Bellator since Simon Bellator, which is it's a weird, I don't know what the fuck is going on with that.
And the fact that when it comes down to Fedor versus Barnett, remember, this fight would have happened 12 years ago if Barnett wouldn't have popped for steroids. No disrespect.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a fight that I think should have and could have been made. Barnett's on record saying that he was never contacted, so I don't know what happened with that. But instead we're getting Big Tim Johnson, who's unfortunately off that most recent loss to Moldavsky, and credit to Big Tim Johnson for having, basically going all three rounds. Almost pulled the Yoel Romero there. All 3 rounds against Moldavsky.
That was a title fight. They did that 5 rounds.
Oh, that was 5. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. A reverse Yoel Romero in that. That was 5 rounds. And listen, credit to Tim.
Hey, can we also just laugh for a moment at Yo Romero claiming that neither he nor his team like figured out that it was a 5-round fight
That's so
in a
ridiculous.
tournament full of 5-round fights?
I know.
I mean,
I know.
I'm sorry, in a, with it like a non-title fight in Bellator. I mean, they announced next year their main events are all going to be 5 rounds.
Actually, quick before we go into the Bellator short, what do you think about that, Teep? Are you happy that they're going to be doing what the UFC does? Main event fights are going to be 5 rounds now, or is it kind of like is this just them copying UFC? What do you think about that whole thing?
Well, so as a sports fan, I like the idea of fighting 25 minutes in the headliner fight. But as a fan of fighters, if you're going to ask more of the fighters, you should pay them more. So really, when you say now non-title main events are all 5 rounds, you're asking for 2/3 more as far as the actual fight time and all the training and preparation for that for the same contract money. I'm not really into that. So hopefully, I guess I'm sure the athletes are just going to take it, but that's not ideal. Josh Thompson recently said, that he was, okay, if it's going to be more important fight stuff, but he had said in the past that, yeah, you're asking for more for the same money. No one would want that at their job. If I go to my job and they're like, hey man, you could pick up 2.5 days a week and, and that's it. Just pick it up for the same money. I'd be like, none of us would do that. So
you would basically say, fuck you. I'm not worth this much.
Well,
I'm just going to leave.
Well, put it this way, Teep. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, Teep, but with the MVP Lima fight, I saw a lot of people saying this should have been 5 rounds because I think you can make an argument if not enough. I think that should have been a 5-round fight. I think the problem is that when you have a 3-round fight and there's it's either like I think 5 rounds is a good enough determination to decide, this person won clearly or they got the finish. I do think that there's times where, it should be 5 rounds. With Rizin, obviously, they don't do any 5-round fights. All their fights, they've been consistent, ever since Jiri left, all the fights have been 3 rounds, whatever minutes, depending on kickboxing.
Either that or they would go and do pride rules. 10-minute first round, 5-minute second and third round. And
then you have promotions like Deep, who it seems like every fight time round is different. So, but I think that you can make an exception that, like, listen, if you're in the main event, you got to fight. This is a little bit more special. You're the headliner. It's one step beyond, or whatever they used to say on Star Trek. I think for main events, you can make exceptions. You know what? Hey, you know what? If you want an opportunity or at the title or whatever, you have 5 rounds, go get a finish or get a definitive win. I think 3 rounds for main events is just, I don't think it's, especially with how a lot of the main events that Bellator's had, I think it's sometimes too, it's not up to decide, hey, this guy's next, this guy is in line for a title, whatever. You understand what I'm saying? I think it makes sense based on the importance of what you want the winner to go on to next, especially to prepare them in case if they do fight for a title next.
Yeah, I mean, the roster is deep enough that they could structure it to where all the main events have like title implications. So then you could say, okay, so 5 rounds, there's something to gain. But just on principle, I'm just not into contractors being asked to do more for the same money. That's all. Just okay,
so if they have more money, apparently, if we're going to go by what Corey Anderson says, hey, he's making more money than he has in Bellator fighting 2 or 3 fights than he ever had, and fighting how many fights in UFC. If we're going to go by that, then I think that you can say, hey, you're making more money here. 2 extra 5-minute rounds. You should be able to do that.
I mean, they can do it contractually, I imagine, and I'm sure it's written in there. But it's if the athletes speak out against it, if some of them are kind of pissed about it, then I would side with them. But I'll be as mad as they are, but not mad on my own. Because as a fan, I'll enjoy seeing longer things. But just thinking about contractors and what you're asked to do and what you're preparing for, that's more involvement. But those contracts they don't get to renegotiate the rest of the contract. They're just told, okay, now you give us this as well. But it's whatever it is. This is MMA. This isn't boxing. The fighters don't have rights. The Ali Act would go a long way
so
towards
that's an entirely different
enabling
story.
them.
Yeah, that's an entirely different story.
Yeah. So I, in spite of really enjoying Bellator as a league, I fully advocate the Ali Act, even though it would make these leagues, they would no longer be in-house and it would change. They couldn't sanction their own belts. But I will advocate that because that's how the athletes get the money and the leverage. And that's the key. The guys who fight, the guys who bleed and have lifelong injuries just from training, they should get the money and have the power. So on principle, I'm going to say that, but I will enjoy the longer fights. I'm not going to stop watching. I watch every single event start to finish, so I'm not going to stop. But on principle, yeah, I side with the contractors. Always.
Also, I think, listen, people in Bellator, they can have sponsors, they can get all the outside money from whatever. They're not constricted by Reebok or Venom sponsorships like the UFC, so they can actually they have the opportunity to make more money outside of whatever they're receiving, whatever their show and win bonuses as well. So I think there's that as well. But I don't want to go.
I was going to say, I haven't heard anyone speak out against it yet. So let's just stick a pin in it and move on to the next thing. Let's keep it going.
Let's talk about Fedor versus.
Before we even get to talking about Fedor versus Tim Johnson, Cold May Day, our friend and yours is basically it's basically saying I haven't been less interested in a Fedor fight since the Jaideep Part Singh fight that happened at the first Rizin show. Second Rizin show.
And just actually to continue on what he's saying, he said that Johnson is more interesting, but that Singh fight was at least a comeback fight. And I do agree, the problem, especially this is in Russia. This is their Bellator's first time in Russia. This is their opportunity to make their claim in Russia. Most of the card is Russian fighters. You have Vitaly Benikov, you have Usman Nurmagomedov, you have everybody. You have people from Nevsky's gym. You have people from Team Fedor, from Shlemenko's gym. This is basically like a rush. This is basically an ACA show.
It's an ACA show. It's either that or it's a Fedor tribute show, so to speak, because you got all Fedor's favorite things.
Yeah, exactly. I see it as like an ACA show, basically, or M1 show, both a Bellator name. That's not an insult. I'm just saying, like, that's like the type of card that is. Listen, UFC goes to Ireland or whatever. Most of it will be Irish people most of the time or whatever. But I mean,
it's definitely booked and timed for the Russian fans. There are a lot of them, so we tend to in the States we tend to think of it kind of US centric, but the Bellator Europe and this Russia card, these kinds of cards, they're not primarily for us. They're also for us. And obviously there's a lot of money in this market for them, but it's really, it's geared to the local crowd. So you will see, like on the Irish card, there's an awful lot of Irish fighters. That's how it should be, because who are the fans really don't want to go and cheer? They want to go and cheer elite fighters from everywhere, but also a whole bunch of hometown favorites, either fighting each other or fighting foreigners. It's just a fun part of combat sports to cheer. Like when Roy Nelson fought Sergey Karatanov, they booed Sergey when he came in, but they still cheered when he knocked Roy out.
Oh yeah, it was. It's not criticism, but I'm just saying that
and you guys, I don't even know why I'm telling you this. You're pro wrestling fans. You know this better than anyone. So I'll stop even talking about it. But let's talk about. See, what Fedor said was
cheer the foreigner, boo the. It's actually the cheer the country guy, boo the foreigner act. We know, we get it.
So I want to ask you about this fight, Fedor versus Big Tim Johnson, Teep. Again, like I said before, I'm not the biggest fan of this fight. I think a bigger fight should have been made. But tell us defend it from your perspective and tell us why this is, an important fight to watch, or why it's more important from your perspective.
Well, for me, I'm trying to, as far as like Fedor's done so much, I'm just like, I'm along for the ride, right? So for me, it's about what he wants. Like if he wanted to do one thing in the promotion, or other people want him to do something that he doesn't want to do, I'm like, no, he's Fedor, we're not. So from his point of view, what does he want? He wanted a tough fight, and he just saw Big Tim go 25 minutes with Moldavsky. He knows he beat Congo in their second fight, in their rematch. He knows he knocked Tyrell Fortune out, and Tyrell Fortune is a serious dude. He was supposed to be on this card. He withdrew, and Salma has taken over to fight Minikov. That would have been a spectacular fight and sort of tie the main and co-main together. But, Fedor said Tim was winning, and I assume he meant until he met his one of his proteges, Moldavsky, but that was a title fight. So he wants to fight the guy who's at the top. He doesn't want to fight other people. And with, like Dos Santos, Fedor said himself in the media this week that he went on a losing streak and got fired from the UFC. So he wasn't really going to consider him. He wants a tough fight. He doesn't want to be the next guy in line to knock someone out. He wants to fight someone who's a strong opponent. And that's just his thing. He's just Mr. Competition. He kind of behaves like he's representing his country and representing his martial art and his school and his teachers, and all that stuff. And then he goes in and kicks ass. So I like the fight. It's a tough fight. It's not a fight because, like fighting Overeem doesn't have the chin to fight Fedor at any age. So yeah, I'd love to see him spark Overeem, but he wouldn't necessarily get the same thing out of his career and his own, what he wants, his goals, sparking Overeem or giving JDS more punishment, like guys who just can be punished and they're not doing well.
I'll tell you the truth. I don't think the JDS fight was at all, was at all a serious consideration. I think that was just things that fans were saying, and it somehow became like, he's one of the guys. You know what I'm saying? Like it became like a thing that fans were talking about as a possibility, and it became like, oh yeah, Bellator is actually talking to JDS, which I don't think ever was a consideration. But it
wasn't. I think Coker might have mentioned his name once in an interview. I know he mentioned Overeem and a couple of Verdum. Maybe he didn't. Maybe I imagined it, but I do remember it coming up on social media in disproportion. That's just his fans. They want Bellator to be the retirement home. After years of making fun of them, now they want it, so they don't have to think about, now this athlete's got to go do something else for money.
But again, I think the fight that should have been made was against Josh Barnett. And, like I said before, Josh Barnett said that he was never contacted about the fight. I don't know, I'm not going to speculate because I have no idea what was going on, but if he wasn't contacted, I think that Scott Coker, Bellator, whoever the booker is, did a great disservice, because I think that's a fight that could have been made. And I think would have had people really talking.
To be honest, Andrew, and I hate to interrupt, even though it's kind of my thing, but we've been wanting this Fedor versus Barnett fight for 12 years. If it wasn't going to happen the first time, why the hell would you think it would happen any other time after that?
Because I'll say this about this, and I think that, and here Kome Day gives a good point in the chat, which is kind of like why I don't want to see this fight. He said, Fedor losing to Johnson will be my second most sad combat sport moment of the year, behind Belfort Holyfield. And listen,
you know what? It might go for the saddest combat sports moment of all time, behind Shinya Aoki versus Kazushi Sakuraba.
That's true. That's the problem.
Hold on, guys. Yeah. Hold on, guys. Though we're talking, Big Tim is younger than Fedor, and he's obviously dangerous. But Fedor isn't completely shot. He's just mortal. He's a mortal man who got older, but he's still way above the curve for his age. So this is like seeing Randy Couture fight someone when he was still when he fought Big Tim, the other Big Tim. He was old as hell, but he got him good early in the fight and was able to use his skill set. So, I mean, this isn't like Fedor's going to his death. I have this pretty much a 50-50 fight. So my soul wants to see Fedor win, but more than that, I just want to see him fight. I want to see these last few fights, and then he's going to be one of the great coaches of this era. When he, just like Khabib is moving, him and Underhav Mendez, that he's becoming a force in the coaching and mentoring field. That's Fedor's future. He's trying to get one more belt for the team before he goes. So he'll probably fight this fight, and then maybe he will fight Barnett, or maybe he'll fight another big name. He said he doesn't want to fight any Russians, so there won't be any Minikovs in there. And, he wants to fight guys who don't look done. So he's not trying to, so we got to, he might have a tough fight, or maybe it is Barnett. But the thing is, Barnett, it was something like he didn't submit his medicals or something like that. And out of the Hani Marks fight. And so it's that's probably why they didn't call him. They're like, dude, we gave you a layup to get back on track. And and you didn't come into the fight. So now you want the big booking, the main event booking. I'm just assuming that's what they were thinking. Like, sorry, man, you blew that fight back in the day with Affliction. We're not setting ourselves up, and you didn't make this fight. So it's just unfortunate. Maybe they can arm wrestle or do sumo or wheelchair box in there. I'll watch it, whatever they do. I'll watch it. I'll always want that fight, but I can see why they didn't book it, because it's like, I want the fight to happen. Big Tim is in Moscow. He's ready to go. He's a big, durable guy. He took hell from Moldavsky and stayed in the fight for 25 minutes. A tremendous show of heart. This is going to be a war. And if he wins, that's fine. That's the best win of his career. Just like Mitrione, just like other guys who've beaten Fedor, that's the best win of their careers. There's no shame in that.
I have a question, just going off of that, Teep. The problem with this fight I have is that, Tim wins. He gets a win over Fedor, and it's kind of like it does nothing, in my personal opinion, for his career. If Fedor wins, though, it does nothing. He beat big Tim Johnson, and it kind of like it does nothing. But the reason why I want that Barnett fight, and like Chris said, because should have gotten that fight 12 years ago in Strike Force or wherever it was supposed to happen.
Actually, it was an Affliction ban.
Affliction.
Thank and blame Donald Trump and Oscar De La Hoya for that.
So that fight should have happened. I think this would have been a great opportunity. Now, if they don't have it now, I think, he said this is his second to last fight, right, Teep?
Well, he's probably winging it to some degree, but that does seem to be the indication. People were trying to say this was his last fight and getting mad. Like, I think that's just people being sensationalist and just, Fedor's kind of grounded. The management and Coker and his team, they're kind of grounded. It's like down to earth. It's not all this soap opera BS. And some fans are so used to the UFC, just like where it's all like a sitcom, and Dana's this crazy cartoon, and he's the real star, and everyone has to kiss his butt, and it's all about what he wants, and then he's just doing what his bosses want at Endeavor. So, but people focus on him, and it's like people expect that from every promotion. They expect it from Rizin, they expect it from KSW, they expect it from Bellator. That's not realistic. I like the way they run it. It's kind of down to earth. Fedor has a perfect temperament to be associated with Bellator. That means Scott Coker has the whole team, basically. The real reason they signed him, it's not just so you can promote Fedor and get that attention. It's because Moldavsky, Nemkov, the Anatoly Tokov, who's fighting on this card, these are the future. These are the students of the greatest of all time, and these are like some of the top Sambo/MMA fighters in the world. So they're coming, and Fedor wants to get one more belt. So hopefully the next fight for Tokov, if he wins this, will be a title fight, the winner of Vanderford and Musasi. And I would be cool with that, even though his opponent's good, but he's not an in-house guy, but he has a good record. He has a severe winning record. But Tokov, I already had him ranked very high. He had a layoff because of the pandemic, but I already had him as one of the top couple guys. So Vanderford did surpass him, but if he wins this, slap him in there and on the same card as Fedor's last fight. The whole team should fight on Fedor's last card.
I think when we had you on a previous show, Teep, we were talking about like whatever happened to Minikov, and like why is he not fighting? Remember, I think we may have even talked about that. I recall.
I remember that, and he's fighting Salma, who is good, who gave Fortune a hard fight. That was a close fight, and people were saying, I'm pretty sure it was him. I'm a little tired. I'm a little scattered. I can't get into it. I've been doing a lot of stuff today. I just so for anyone listening, so I have two passions as far as sports. I do Bellator. I rave about Bellator, but I also do boxing research and content. I work with thefightcity.com. I also have just research in general. I'm doing it like the early 1900s, pretty much like 1900 to 1905. I'm doing intense study and some content on wider historical boxing. So my attention is split. So I don't have the laser focus right now at this time of day that I would normally have regarding Bellator. Like I should know Tokov's opponent's name, but I just can't remember it.
So I guess my question for you, Teep. So this is presumably Fedor's second to last fight, and then we have his last fight. Out of all the fighters who are with Bellator right now, or maybe not in Bellator, I guess most will have to go with Bellator since that's where most of Fedor's team and like 10,000 Russians fight. Who do you think is potentially the next Fedor? And I know you and I talked about it off air a little bit. Do you think it's Minikov? Do you think it's Nemkov? Maybe it's somebody else. Maybe one of Khabib's 1,000 cousins or brothers or whoever is in the Nurmagomedov. Who do you think is potentially going to be the next Fedor?
Well, I think that there's only one Fedor, and his combination of explosiveness with technique and reaction time and calm mind. His total package, I think he's just a one-off. It's like in the arts, including the martial arts, but like the greats, they show up, you don't necessarily get another. So there's only one Fedor. But as far as who is one of these next generational greats, I do think Nemkov, and he has a tough fight ahead, but Vadim Nemkov, the way he moves, and he's also, 4-time gold medalist in combat sambo at a world level. So he's not, like his mentor, he's not just powerful in one combat sport. He's world class, like top of the sport, world class in 2 combat sports at the same time. That's a powerful thing. So I think he's the guy, but Moldavsky is very good himself, but I really do. And so is Tokov. Tokov, his fight with Alexander Shlemenko was fantastic, but he has a lot of maturity. He's not that old. I think he's still in his late 20s, or maybe he's 30 by now. I've lost track over the pandemic. Time has sort of compressed and dilated and just gone all crazy for all of us, I think. But yeah, I think it's Vadim Nemkov, and I do think I edge him slightly over Anderson, but this is a tough matchup for him stylistically. That level of power and that size, that reach advantage, and then the cardio to be explosive over time. But Nemkov, his technique is superb. What about you guys? Who do you think's the future?
What do you think, Christian? I'll go with you first.
Andrew, you want to go with that first? Because I got a lot to say after you get done.
Okay, yeah. I guess in that case, probably Nemkov is the closest. I still think we need an Albrechtsen Nemkov rematch to happen somewhere down the line to really truly define it. Maybe, who knows? Maybe Albrechtsen is Nemkov's Achilles heel. And that's the one guy he just can't defeat for whatever reason. But I think Nemkov has shown that especially, yeah, I know he's not undefeated like Fedor was when Fedor was fighting at his prime. But I think that Nemkov, in terms of the closest that we have to a Fedor like, in terms of just a guy who's good at everything and who beats everybody else at their own game, I think he's the closest that we have in terms of a fighter like that. His fight against Bader, that was like, in terms of domination, that is one of the most brutally dominant fights I've seen in such a long time against 2 major fighters. His fight, the fight against Anglicus, Anglicus he tried his best, but you only could do your best against a guy like him. Well, Phil Davis, probably the closest person in recent history who has come close to coming close to matching Nemkov. And even then he was still defeated by Nemkov twice. Yeah.
The first fight was very close. I mean, well, I shouldn't say it was very close. He was close to being finished.
Yeah.
So he won the first 2 rounds, but the 3rd round, he was in a lot of danger at the end. Davis has phenomenal cardio, and he's also very strong. Yeah. So he has cardio to be extremely strong and excellent technique, and the world, like a collegiate champion of wrestling around that weight. So he was really just, and so it was a bad matchup and a hard guy to beat, and he's practically indestructible. So Nemkov had a lot more trouble with him, but Phil Davis is world class. He's one of the great light heavyweight fighters in the sort of the collection of his generation. And because there have been a lot. Light heavyweight's a good division, but sometimes it's split up between promotions. We don't have it like boxing where they can fight each other. You could imagine just for a minute, imagine if the winner of Anderson, if after the next respective fights, the winners then fight, the UFC champ and Bellator champ at that point fight. That's a super fight. That's a cross sport fight. Boxing gets those every now and again. We don't get that.
Yeah,
and that's unfortunate.
I'd love to see Jiri versus Nemkov again. He's the only other person to defeat Nemkov. That'd be great.
Well, I think Jiri's going to end up with the UFC belt, and then maybe that's a closer dream fight to have. I think he's the best over there.
Yeah.
And you know what?
Yeah,
That would be
Chris.
fun to see when it comes down to Jury finally being, eventually being the UFC champion, because it would prove that all fighters from Rizin aren't, Roy. Well, actually, no, that all fighters who go to the UFC from Rizin aren't just basic pushovers. But still, going back to expectations, I think it was you that pointed that out, Andrew. Actually, that was Teep that pointed that out about expectations, that people wanted to, expect people. Damn it! What am I saying? People want to expect fight promotions to all act like the UFC. People want to see Bellator, Rizin, KSW, all these other promotions act like the UFC because they're not satisfied with what they're currently getting with the product from around the world, because it's not like what's going on in the octagon. And to be honest, I think it's a little hard for me to just explain it into words. I'm trying to find the right words to say, but I think, it would be best for all those fans to just shut the fuck up when it comes down to expecting something, because they know they're not going to get it. It's like this whole Fedor, it's like the whole Fedor Barnett thing that's been happening for 12 years. It's just sad that we got to remember that. But still, point of the matter is, all we need to expect is, great fights to come. And if there is a chance where we see, cross promotional things happen, maybe we can enjoy that. But until then, I think they need to just shut the fuck up about that.
Also, I just
Now,
want to clarify. Oh, sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead. I can continue on after you're done talking.
I just want to quickly clarify what I mean by the next Fedor. Listen, there'll never be another Fedor in terms of domination. Even DC, I don't think that DC was. I know he got the nickname Black Fedor. I don't even think he came close to the type of dominant fighting style that Fedor had.
Andrew, let me break in and just say that DC joined the sport pretty late. Fedor was the king of the world in his 20s. He didn't join the sport when he was 30, when he had a medical issue. But let me say, DC in the Bigfoot fight and the Barnett fight, those two fights, those I consider his two greatest wins, he was on a Fedor level, at least for those two fights. Those were masterful, destructive fights. It's just that Barnett was a lot better fighter than Bigfoot. So Bigfoot got decked, but Barnett has second, third, fourth, fifth level fight IQ. So that became a war. And they both, I think, broke their hands. They fought 5 grueling rounds. It was beautiful. And so I do want to give DC credit. He has an all-time great standing for a fantastic Hall of Fame career, but he aged, we didn't get him in 2004 because he was in the Olympics. He was busy. So he's one of those guys who had a great career, maybe could have been even greater. Like maybe Bernard Hopkins would be an example. He joined late, but he stayed late.
I think it also needs to be mentioned, Fedor was an undersized heavyweight, could have probably been a middleweight at some point in his career as well. He beat guys who were seen as undefeatable or just very hard to beat. The way he beat Big Nog, the way he beat Crow Cop twice, the way he beat so many other fighters, and just such a dominant, the Kevin Randleman fight where he recovered from being dropped on his head from a suplex. This guy has had such a, and especially because I think MMA at the time was not this developed sport. You had people who were good at one thing who really, and then they sucked at everything else or were not as good. Big Nog was a jiu-jitsu guy. He wasn't a stand-up guy. But Fedor had...
To be fair to him, he had excellent stand-up, but he was so much better at the other. But I would like to stand up for those guys, though, because say for the fight of the decade, Crow Cop was, if I'm not mistaken, training with Verdum. He wasn't, which is partly why he actually did better being under Fedor than anyone else did. Like he actually shut a lot of that down because he had the technique. So there were legends. Maybe there were less guys who were well-rounded, but the top guys, we're never going to get another Crow Cop either. I'm pretty sure.
But I think also at the time you could say Fedor was well-rounded at a time when so few people were well-rounded and were able to just do good at everything and just have like that MMA fight IQ to not get defeated by everybody else's strengths. Because the Big Nog was tapping out everybody. Crow Cop was knocking out everybody. Fedor managed to beat both guys without either, when those guys were at the peak of their career. So
that was an incredibly rich era.
Yes.
So in that specific case, because remember, like the transfer of the golden age of kickboxing, heavyweight kickboxing, to the golden age of heavyweight MMA, they overlapped. We got a lot from that. That's how we got a lot of guys who stayed in the game a long time, because they're all-time great strikers, so they could fight past their prime. And so that's how you have Crow Cop and Mark Hunt and these guys who came over and they were like good. They were high level. They just fought at such a high level. Like Mark Hunt's opening run of fights is absolutely silly.
Yeah, I don't think Mark Hunt.
Would you basically say that the age of heavyweight MMA is just as great as the age of heavyweight boxing?
Oh, I don't know. Probably not. No,
I have to go.
It hasn't been, but it was pretty. It was pretty great. It was pretty great. And the thing is, boxing's had several like rich eras in each division over all the generations. So I mean, it's a little more complex in boxing. So, if you're just talking about the gloved era, you're going back well over 100 years of constant fighting including at a time when guys could have 20, 30 fights a year. Some of these great boxers like Maxie Rosenblum, 300, almost 300 fights. Harry Greb, almost 300 fights. They didn't fight that many years. In Greb's case, he died, and Maxie Rosenblum, he just squeezed it all in, and then he went to do like TV stuff. But they fought tremendous amounts of fights. The gentleman I'm studying most, the Boston Bone Crusher, Canadian-born Boston Bone Crusher, Sam Langford, he had over 300 fights that we know about. We don't know how many privates he had, and it's sort of estimated he had maybe a bunch more that we don't know about, but he had 300 fights. And it's like studying his career, his opening year, he went to the ring 27 times, I believe.
Wow. That's
at the end of the year, he fought two of the greats of that generation. He fought Jack Blackburn, who became Joe Lewis's coach. That's what he's mostly known for, but he was a brilliant and one of the all-time greats of the early era himself. Brilliant fighter who could fight above his weight, defensive wizard. And Langford fought him, and he also in a prearranged draw, meaning if no one got knocked out, it's a draw. Blackburn slightly got the edge, but prior to that, he had fought Joe Gans, who's one of the greatest fighters in the whole history of the sport. And he was just a teenager. He was in not his rookie year, because he had one fight the year before, but 1903, so his like 26th fight that year was against one of the greatest stylists of all time, one of the most influential boxers that ever lived. So much so that Joe Gans was a hero to a lot of other all-time great boxers in his day and in later generations. He was so good. They called him the old master, but he was in his 20s. And he fought a ridiculous schedule. So I'm getting off the point. You see, I can go on about the boxing.
Okay, man. This podcast is off the damn point all the time. Have you heard us lately?
I'm
sorry, Andrew. Just to circle back somehow to what we were talking about.
Yeah.
The golden age of heavyweight MMA wasn't as deep as boxing, and Langford started off at lower weights anyway. But the golden age of heavyweight MMA, as far as like pan martial arts sort of competition, is as strong as anything that ever existed. There were just maybe not as many people, but there were so many great stylists at heavyweight and also at light heavyweight in the 2000s. So you have guys like Karatanov and Sammy Schilt and other guys who people might not think of as great, but they definitely were. They were greats of their generation, and some of them fought on a long time after their primes. Just like Fedor, he's still fighting. He's fighting a guy who's in his mid to late 30s, and he's in his mid 40s. And we don't know if he's going to lose. That's greatness right there. So I'm all for this fight.
So, Teep, I guess I have to ask then. So this fight happens. And then let's presume that the next fight that Fedor has is his last fight. And maybe it won't even happen in Bellator. It might happen in Rizin. But regardless of that, who should be Fedor's last opponent in his pro MMA career, in your opinion? If you're given the booking pen and unlimited amount of money, who would you call?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it might depend on what happens between Ryan Bader and Valentin Moldavsky. Because now Bader's lost to Corey Anderson. He's going to unify the heavyweight title against the interim champion, who is Fedor's student. And depending on what happens there, who knows? Maybe if he beats Moldavsky, Fedor wants to rematch him, win or lose. Well, he'd have to win. Sorry, he'd have to beat Big Tim. Who knows?
Why can't it be Josh Barnett?
You know what I would do? You know what I would do if there were no consideration for how famous someone is? I want to see Fedor fight Steve Mowry. Tall Steve. That's stylistically, I love that. Fedor versus a really tall guy. Come on now.
So Tim, I'm not Tim, Teep. I'm gonna have to beat Levelovia and be honest. Listen, I think that Fedor has to go out on a big fight. I think you can't have him against a Steve Mowry. I understand the side you're coming from, but I think you need to have. It's got to be a big fight, and regardless of win, lose, or draw, it's got to be a big name. It's got to be a headline fight, something that you can put on a marquee and get people. Oh, I want to see that fight. And
you know what, Andrew? I think I got the perfect fight to compete against.
Okay.
How about have him face off against Mark Hunt again?
I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind. I don't know what Mark Hunt's doing now. Besides doing the UFC or whatever he's doing. But listen, that's a fight I'd be interested in.
Mark Hunt is doing boxing after he just
I forgot.
rugby player.
Well, I forgot about that. Yeah, he's doing boxing. Yeah, listen, Mark, that rematch, because that was when Mark Hunt was in a emotional and mental slump. I would definitely, say that I would put that fight on as a main event. I can't from a drawing perspective and from a final fight perspective justify Fedor versus Steve Mowry. And this is not an insult on Steve Mowry, but it's more just like he's not at that level that I want to put that as Fedor's last fight. Does that? I hope I'm not sounding too harsh.
No, I understand totally. I'm sort of disengaged from the process at this point. I'm enjoying the ride. And if Fedor wants tough fights, if he wants to go out on tough fights, I'm definitely not going to be someone who's like, no, give me an easier opponent.
I get it. I'm sorry to interrupt. Sometimes you got to tell the fighters, and you and I talked about this, with MVP and Lima. MVP wants to rematch with Lima, the trilogy. And if I was his management, I'd be like, no, shut the fuck up. You won.
Yeah, but he's his management.
I know that's
yeah. So that's the whole thing is he's Fedor and we're not. So I'm just going with it. And I'm looking forward to the Big Tim fight, man. I don't want to see him fight. As much as I'd like to see him knock JDS or Overeem spark out, I would like to see that, right? I love another highlight real moment from the great Fedor Emelianenko. But I also kind of like the butterflies that goes with a tough fight. The Frank Mir fight, I thought I favored him, but I wasn't like sure he would beat Mir. And we saw Mir rocked him.
I'll even say this. He's a commentator for PFL. I wish he wasn't officially retired. Fuck, I'd love to see Randy Couture versus Fedor.
Do you really want to see that fight that should have happened over a decade ago? Because I don't think that Couture now would be able. I mean, I don't even think Couture back then would be able to match up with Fedor.
I don't know if you're probably right, Chris. But Randy Couture was beating people that 10 times bigger than him, and I think from a stylist perspective, it would have been an incredible fight to make, in my personal opinion.
But he's an incredible fight, but it also would have been a financial disaster for whoever would have put it on.
I get it. No, I get it. So, but Couture's retired. It's not going to happen. I think you got to do either Overeem, because it looks like I don't know what the fuck's happening with Glory, if it's even exists still.
Glory still exists. They're going to have a fight with, they're still planning to have that collision card in the Netherlands this weekend.
Okay.
But they want to have Overeem fight next year. But what you're saying is you want Mir, Overeem, or Mark Hunt.
No, I don't want Mir. I don't want the Mir fight already happened. That Mir fight already happened with Fedor.
Oh, okay. So you're saying it's Mark Hunt, Alistair Overeem, and who else?
Josh Barnett. Those are the 3 fights to make on Fedor's retirement. In my final fight, in my personal opinion, you can't put a Steve Mowry or a Tyrell Fortune. I'm trying to
You
think.
wouldn't want to see him. Hold on, you wouldn't want to see him throw hands with Fortune. That would be
No.
a thrilling fight.
Because the other thing, Teep, and this is this is a business side. This is also a business, the fight business, as they say.
But I'm not in the fight business.
Oh, I get it. No, I get it. But I think you got to also think about what fight's going to generate the most interest, what's going to get people to subscribe to Showtime, what's going to get people talking on social media. That's also got, and I do the same thing with Rizin. I hold Rizin at the same center as well. That, sometimes you got, it may not be the.
Oh, hey, Andrew. So just to clarify, you're asking me what Bellator should do.
Yeah. Well, I asked you what
I'm just talking about what I want. No.
I'm saying from my personal perspective, and you want Steve Mowry. I'm thinking like if I was given the pen unlimited money, I would be like thinking, no, I can't do a Steve Mowry. I can't do a Tyrell Fortune. I need to think of a big fight of, Fedor versus something that's on the marquee that's going to get people talking. And that's either Barnett, Overeem, or Hunt. I don't know if there's anybody else I can think of besides one of those three.
Overeem signed away. I mean, he signed it off to Glory. So he's.
Oh yeah, but listen.
And then after he signed to a different company, he was like, "Hey, I wanted to fight Fedor." Like, bro, you never wanted to fight Fedor. Sit down.
Heck, I'll even say this. I'll even say this.
Let's get that clear. Overeem never wanted to fight Fedor. That's the worst matchup for him in the sport, and it doesn't matter how old either of them are. Come on, Fedor chins Overeem. He cannot take a Fedor right hand. He's upright. He's very powerful, but Fedor is just going to jam hands down his face. Come on now. He never wanted that fight. He never wanted it. He had opportunity. He was the champ in Strikeforce, and Fedor was there, and he was like,
"No." Green and in K1 as well.
Yeah, but he didn't. He never. If he wanted that fight, he would have had that fight when he was much bigger and younger, and was one of the top guys in the sport. He definitely doesn't want those hands.
Okay. So that's not going to happen. But I'll even say this: I'd be even more interested if it was Fedor versus Jake Hager. Jake Hager was
really?
Because
that's a free fight. I would watch.
It's a free fight.
I would watch it.
It's a free fight.
Steve Mowry. You probably even say Fedor versus Brock Lesnar if Lesnar wasn't tied down to the big fat and Stanford.
Yeah, I'd watch. I'd watch the hell out of that. Because it's more on a freaky level. Although Brock is enormous, but yeah, it's kind of more of a freaky fight. But I'm fine with that. I love freaky fights. It's just I just want to make sure the athletes aren't getting screwed. So if Fedor wants tough fights, he should get tough fights. He shouldn't get the ghost of Overeem. Who's a great fighter. I mean, all the tough fights that guy had. But come on, like he signed somewhere else and then started talking. JDS has lost a lot of fights. Fedor said he doesn't want to fight someone who's lost a bunch of fights. Well, so again, we can rule out a lot of those guys. Yeah. If they haven't done anything lately, he doesn't want to see him.
I think for Fedor's fight, you got to either do a freak show fight or a big name fight, something that just gets people talking. Because if it's the last fight, it's got – listen, what was Anderson Silva's last fight in UFC? Well, I remember who was his last opponent. Was it Bisping? I don't remember at this point.
I think it was against Uriah Hall.
Uriah fucking Hall. Come on, give me a fucking break. Come on.
Who are we talking about?
Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva's last fight was against Uriah Hall. That's not a fight you go out on. You got to go out on something big.
He just fought. He's still going.
Yeah, in boxing.
Out of Tito Ortiz.
Yeah, he just that was beautiful. He gave us one of the most beautiful moments.
Holy shit! Actually, hey, you know what? If you want to do Tito Ortiz versus
come on, man.
Tito Ortiz versus Fedor, that would get people.
I would watch that too. I used to say I would watch that fight.
No. Do you really want a concussion to happen? A severe one at that?
No, Tito has a gigantic head. He won't get a concussion. He will get knocked out, but he won't get a concussion. No,
it'd be fucking hilarious.
Again, the dude says dumb shit all the time. Of course he's gonna get a concussion.
Again, I think you have to for Fedor's last fight, it's either gotta be a fight that people have clamored for, or just a big dumb freak show fight. I don't think there's any in between. You can't have it against somebody who's an up and coming prospect or somebody who's just a good fighter. It's gotta be something that's gonna get people talking. Has to be something that you can put on a marquee or that can sell Showtime subscriptions. I'm coming from that perspective. I know you're coming from a different perspective, Teep, but I'm just going by like if I was given the pen and what I'm thinking.
Oh yeah, I'm just talking about it as a martial arts fan. What I would
Hey, listen,
do, like
listen,
if nothing else mattered, just what would I do? I'd have him fight Steve Murray. I would love to see that
oh yeah,
fight.
in a perfect world, and then people will be excited about the fight, but it will also, we have to be honest, MMA fans suck. A lot of Western MMA fans are terrible people. And
Come to think of it, you know what a lot of Western MMA fans can do? I think what they need to do is, hold on one second. I think what they need to do is,
No bum ass up, man.
yeah, because a lot of Western MMA fans, and we all know it, they're a bunch of idiotic. They don't know what they're talking about.
but
Yeah, I'm guilty of that myself, though.
oh yeah. So, but Tipo, we're gonna move on to another topic, and we talked a little bit about before. And it's the current not issue, but I guess the current standings of the welterweight division. We got MVP, we got Lima, we got Amazov as champion. We had the MVP Lima most recent match. That was a split decision win for MVP. Very contested fight. Some people thought that Lima won. Some people thought that MVP won. I think with fights like that are just so close where there's no definitive winner, you kind of have to throw your hands up in the air and be like, okay, we have to have the fight again, or at least one more fight for the winner to clearly define. We had the Joshua ass kicking machine Jackson fight and the Gracie fight, Neiman Gracie fight, where Jackson kind of just won by the skin of his teeth. So
Yeah,
what do you think?
It's Jason, though. Oh, it's not. Sorry, go ahead, brother.
I was gonna say, so I know that MVP wants to run this Lima fight again. I don't think they should. I think they should do MVP versus Jackson, and then the winner of that fights Amazov. What do you think is the welterweight? What do you do for welterweight at this point?
Oh, that'd be a great fight. I think MVP wanted to run the Lima fight back. Lima probably wants to run that fight back. Fans were like, it was close. I mean, I scored it for MVP 2-1 because he was getting knockdowns. Lima wasn't doing anything coming back that could match that. And it's not like he had some, because MVP is very good at sort of tying up the wrists and tying up the hands when he's on his back. He shut Lima down in the first fight that way, and he didn't do it as successfully this time, but he did still mostly shut him down. He's very strong. He's very wiry and strong, incredibly strong. And so, the fight was close, but I did score for MVP. But I think, if they want to run it again, yeah, I'd watch it again. Make it 5 rounds. Do it early next year when the main event's are 5 rounds. Boom, now they're in a 5-round non-title fight. And while they're doing that, Jason Jackson can get a well-earned shot against the undefeated Sambo champion. Not undefeated at Sambo, but a Sambo champion, undefeated MMA Yaroslav Amazov, which is a great fight.
Wait,
that's how I would run it.
Are you basically saying that the ass kicking machine, the former LFA champion Jason Jackson, should get the next title shot against Amazov?
Absolutely, because his only recent loss, he has great wins, some very strong wins, I should say, and trying for a great win. If he beats Amazov, that's a great win. But he has some very strong wins. He's fighting at a high level. He has a lot of momentum, but also his only recent loss in recent years was a properly controversial loss to Easy Ed Ruth. Because that
was a very close fight, though. I saw that fight, and you could have said,
"Oh, Ruth down," and he was getting the better of a lot of it. Where most fans seemed a little upset at that. That's a fight I could understand if people were like, "Hey, man, I had it close." So I don't often have strong opinions because the different judges about what they're looking for. Some judges are like, "Oh, you're coming forward, throwing jabs in the air. Oh, that counts. Look at you dominating the space." And other judges are like, "You didn't touch him. What do you get out of here with that?"
I also just want to clarify as well that it wasn't Neiman Gracie that was the most recent fight. I forgot the Paul Daly fight. See, here's the problem with Jason Jackson. I think that as a personality, he's great, but so far his wins in Bellator have been uneventful, have not had a stamp on them of yeah, this guy should get the next title shot. MVP at least has those crazy ass finishes, and he can at least talk a lot of shit. So I would be more in favor if you have to say who fights Amazov next. I would say MVP because I think that's from a stylistic point of view. I think I'm intrigued by just how different they are. I feel like Jason Jackson, not the actor Joshua Jackson, Jason Jackson fight for an Amazov fight. I think it's just going to be. I think Amazov takes him down and lays on him for 5 rounds or 3 rounds or whenever they decide to do it, or 5 rounds. I think it's a boring fight. I think with MVP fight, you just have that interesting aspect of, listen, Amazov's great at grappling, but fuck, if MVP gets that knee, gets a jumping knee or a strike or whatever, Amazov's going down. I don't care what anybody says, in my personal opinion. I don't think that Amazov has a striking acumen to match MVP or the speed in that department. What do you think, Teep? Hello?
Teep, are you there? Come
Oh,
in.
sorry about it. I had my stuff on mute. Sorry, fellas. So I saw MVP Daly live, and in the first round, Daly was having so much trouble getting his timing. He just started wrestling. And nobody makes Paul Daly wrestle on purpose, because Paul Daly is one of the great pure strikers around that weight of his generation. So, that told me a lot. Even Daly was like, after the fight, he said, "I'm not stupid. I'm not trying to get knocked out." And he has a lot of bravado, and he's a great fighter in his own right. But nobody's going to outstrike MVP. Lima had a chance, but like if you're looking at probability, MVP is just better on the feet, more mobile, has a lot of power, and a lot of tricky stuff, and very, very, very fast. But no one's indestructible. If he wants to take Amazov, he faced a severe threat, but he can outstrike him 100%. But the question is, can he avoid being taken down? Because he cannot out-grapple him. And he's not going to shut Amazov down the way he did Lima. Lima's not like a guy you'd think of as a ground and pound specialist. But Amazov can do that all day. But I should say, for Jason Jackson, has excellent defensive wrestling. We haven't seen people out-wrestling Jason Jackson for good reason. He's a guy who has a pretty decent offensive wrestling threat. So I would say he's a tough fight for Amazov. I think they're all great fights, though, and whatever they decide, I'm down for it. I'm going to be watching and loving it, because there's an argument for both, MVP or Jackson. There should be one of those two.
I just think the more exciting fight, the more, not perplexing, the more one that I would be personally interested as a fan is MVP versus Amazov. I don't know, Chris, what do you think? Would you Jason Jackson MVP or Lima rematch?
I don't think that Jason Jackson has done enough to me to warrant a title shot, let alone warrant an opportunity to become a contender, even though, he's a top contender now because he, built himself a name up in the LFA, and he won titles. No, wait, actually, and he won that welterweight title in the LFA. And now he's basically made a name for himself in Bellator, but I don't think he's a contender. I think Michael Venom Page, who had the opportunity to fight for the title once against Douglas the Phenom Lima, he didn't fight for the title once against Lima. He lost to Lima. But I do think that, of course, it'll only be a matter of time before Michael Venom Page becomes the Bellator welterweight champion. I just think that he needs the right opportunity to get that title shot.
I think that Chris brings up a great point. Listen, Jackson may have the wins, but I've also been of the belief, I'm old school. It's not the win, but how you win. If you win by just laying on people or just taking them down to the ground and just, bear hugging them for 5 minutes, 50 rounds, that tells me nothing, and in fact, it makes me not want to. I would rather get somebody who loses on their own shield, who dies by their own sword, than rather somebody who plays it safe. And, that's the one thing I've always liked about JMA is that they've focused a lot of times on how the win happens rather than the actual win, and even the losses, how somebody loses. Jason Jackson has gotten 5 or 6 impressive wins in Bellator. That's great, but they've all been by basically the same way, and he does nothing that tells. His personality is great. I love the fact that he's very confident. I think his story is great, especially coming from LFA and losing his first fight against Ed Roof in that very close fight is great, but I want to see something that makes me think, this guy deserves a championship. This guy deserves to be in the main event. MVP has done more, in my personal opinion, just because of the trash talk that he does, the fact that he makes people online so angry, just by his mere existence, or just the way he fights. He fights in such a unique style.
When it comes down to the people online that are angry just that MVP exists, I think what they need to do is Hold on 1 second. I think what they need to do is
Shut your bum ass up, man.
because they basically just wasting everybody's time trying to hate on the man while he's shining for the entire world to see.
And by the way, all the talk. Sorry,
11
sorry.
of the 16 Bellator wins, in case you didn't know, have come by knockout.
And you
don't have a reason to shine.
And here's the thing, the MVP fight of MVP and Derek Anderson fight happened. Everybody was like, "Oh, this is the true test for him," and he destroyed Derek Anderson and his nose. He destroyed Derek Anderson's face and almost entire face. So this whole talk about that he's only fights cans and that he's only good against cans is total bullshit. I've always been of that belief that he was always better than the fans made him out to be.
Well, the vocal fans, but I mean, certain angry people disproportionately spew noise out online. So I mean, what we're exposed to on social media is way disproportionate. That's what makes them so mad. But most people don't care. They just want to see MVP knock someone out. Now we know the different levels of opponent. He's had tough fights. He's had easier matchups. But that's not how the promotion game works. So we can differentiate between what we think and then what the really hardcore vocal fans think, and then what the general public does, or what the promotions, how they relate to the public. So I'm cool with either fight. He just beat Lima. That's a big plus on his win streak. So now he has a prime win streak. Jackson beat Gracie. That's a serious win. And
I say do MVP versus Jackson, and then that's the next contender.
So who does Amazov fight?
Tell Amazov to take a vacation. I don't know.
Yeah, but you don't want to tell him to take a vacation too long, because then it'll feel like he's holding.
I'll even say this. Actually,
that's killing off a contender. He can fight one of them, and one of the others can fight someone else for.
He can fight Neiman. I think Neiman's done enough to win a title.
Oh, for a title shot? Well,
yeah, I think that Neiman Gracie has done enough to win a title. He's shown that other than the Rory loss and the Jackson loss, which I don't know.
What about MVP Neiman? But there's also Storley, man. What about Storley? He's in that mix too, man.
I don't think Storley's there yet, but I think the fact that Neiman Gracie knocked out his last opponent, Mark Lemminger, I think that tells me a lot about Gracie. And I think that you can make an argument that Gracie, despite the loss to Jackson, and the loss to Rory, he has dominated almost all of his fights, and he's finished them in such great fashion. So I think you can definitely make an argument
over Jackson.
Again, I come by it's not the win, but how you win. That's my personal belief.
Exactly.
I agree, but in times like this, just so I don't get too, because I'm always scared to lose the plot.
Yeah.
So in times like this, I try to relate it to other sports. If an NFL team is winning its way through the playoffs with run, pass, field goal, that's still better. A grinding win is still it's a different technique to win fights, but it's, if guys are winning rounds, well, if they're judging round by round, that's how it goes. Same thing in boxing, kickboxing, takedowns at the end of the round in MMA is the thing, or a flurry, try and catch the judge's eye. But that's the thing in boxing. It's been for ages. So guys learn how to win fights. And if you want them to act differently, you have to change the rules, like whole fight judging in Japan. When they do that, some of the promotions, I love that, because now you're really talking, but they're not doing that. So it's a sports league. So I say that Jason Jackson has the best claim, or MVP has the best claim. It's very close between them. Either one of those would be a well-deserved title shot. But I just think because MVP wants to fight Lima again, they'll go with that.
I also think I understand the sports analogy, but here's the problem. When with the Houston Astros and the Red Sox playing tonight. Listen, the Houston Astros, you can't say that somebody didn't get a home run, or that somebody didn't hit the ball properly, or that there's very little margin of error in other sports compared to MMA.
Especially when you have a team that's more known for long pitching, losing badly, and having their home crowd leave early.
Would you rather have someone who's not making, again, you want people to tune in to, Bellator, it's not the UFC, it's a second, whatever promotion in the United States, but that's not
a lot of people think it's the minor league compared to the UFC.
They're stupid, but you do have to set a different standard when you're not the top whatever. You have to say we do this way. Rizin does it. Hey, we have soccer kicks. We're in a ring. This is how we differentiate ourselves. And I think if Bellator said, you know what, we're not going to judge by how you win, and we're not going to judge the win, but how you win. I think that can set themselves apart from UFC, where despite whatever.
But realistically, you're talking about changes at the commission level. They don't have that kind of swing. They're sanctioned when they're not under a sanctioning body. They're under Mazzulli of the Mohegan Sun.
Oh, but listen,
tribal commission. So they're not going to be changing the rules or anything. That's why they did the weird thing with Bellator Japan. They were like, we can't really do. So we're going to say that it's now the rising cage for the post limbs, so they can use rising rules. But it's their show. We're not using rising rules. And Coker said they're going to keep their rule set, so that we can imply they do that. But I would say again, draw differentiation between what they want and what I want. Like I'm a sports fan, so I want the most worthy challengers to get the title shots, especially as they don't fight that often. I just think Jason Jackson, MVP, each have more or less equal claim to a title shot. So as long as they do one of those, I'm happy.
Boom,
it's like
wonderful. If they're both equal, then I think they should fight each other to get a definitive winner. Jason Jackson wins.
Contender Amazov, if he's ready to fight, he should get to fight, because it's got to be sporting wise. It needs to be fair to everyone. So if the champ is ready to fight, one of those guys should be fighting him. He shouldn't have to sit because they want these other guys to fight each other. He needs to fight. He's the man.
Okay.
So the more the champs want to fight, I'm down for that. They can have him fight 5 times a year.
Neiman Gracie,
go for it.
I think, okay, or you know what? Here's, I totally forgot. I have here in my notes, Neiman Gracie called out, he said he wanted to rematch Jackson. Okay, you can have Neiman, and you get this on the same card, Neiman versus Jackson, MVP versus Amazov.
Those are great fights. And Neiman is learning. He's still growing. He's just coming into his prime. So, yeah, that's a cool fight. But I do think that as long as one of those guys gets a title shot, it's fair. It's close.
Again, yeah. So if you want to say MVP deserves it, I'm totally fine with that. If you want to say that Jackson and Gracie have to settle their, that kind of wonky fight that they had, I'm all for that as well. I just think that I think the problem is that welterweight, there's really no clear number one contender. And so you have to do something to either make a case for somebody to be the contender, or you have to do either, I don't know, Bellator will have to do whatever, or just have a fight to say, yeah, this is our contender, whoever wins this fight. There's no definitive. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think MVP I think there's a timing aspect too. So like MVP just fought, right? So they may have already negotiated out or have planned and not announced the date and have Jackson fighting Amazov sometime early next year. And, they're not necessarily, they're pretty good at keeping secrets. So some of these things really are a surprise. So I wouldn't be shocked, because the timing of the thing, Jackson and Amazov have gone through the healing cycle. So the booking, it's like MVP, you have to wait for MVP for his sort of schedule, unless they just do the fast turnaround. I don't know. I'm cool with either. It's like with Stotts and Horiguchi fighting Pettis. I'm cool with either. It's not like someone's getting screwed because it's a close argument. So I'm fine with it. It's a lot of fun. I can't wait for it. How about this? Let me just ask you guys about Patchy Mix. Jackson Wings Patchy Mix versus SBG's James Gallagher on this Bellator Ireland card. Who you guys got in that fight and why?
Listen, that was a fight that I've wanted for a long time. It was supposed to happen like a month ago, right? But I think Patchy Mix got injured, or Gallagher got injured, or something happened, right? Remember something happened? It was supposed to happen months ago.
Yeah, I can't remember. It might have been Gallagher. I'm not sure. But one of them did. Yeah, they fell through.
Listen, I still think that Gallagher is a fighter to look at. I think that his one loss to Juan Archuleta, listen, he lost to Juan Archuleta, who got defeated by Pettis eventually. Listen, I think Patchy Mix is still one of the best unsung heroes of the bantamweight division, and I look forward to all of his fights. Gallagher, I hope he shit talks. I want to see shit talking. I want to see these two throw barbs at each other. I want to see these two show how much they fucking don't like each other. I want to see that confrontation that they had in Ireland or wherever the fuck it was. I want to see that come into this fight. I hope these two legitimately hate each other. I hope they don't like each other. I hope they see each other as obstacles to move forward in Bellator, because they really are the future of the division, and they should really realize, listen, I beat him. I'm potentially next in line, or at least in consideration to fight whoever wins against Pettis and Horiguchi. Because imagine that.
Yeah.
Imagine, whoever if Mix wins, imagine Pix versus Mix versus Pettis or Horiguchi. Imagine same thing with Gallagher.
Dude,
The Stotts fight doesn't work out.
I think that a fight between Patrick Melnor Mix and Keoki Horiguchi would be a bomb-ass banger. I mean, but I think that if James Gallagher were to fight Horiguchi, it would just be an ass whooping and a half for Kyoji because he would just beat that little cocky motherfucker up.
I'm more interested for a mixed Horiguchi fight, or even Horiguchi versus Pettis, just because of the stylistic differences.
But I think it's worth noting that the highest level recent win we saw was Stotts beating Magomedov.
Yeah,
he's really the guy in line. So,
yeah.
But hopefully they launch the Grand Prix. Bantamweight is obviously the division. They've got some bantamweight fights announced, so maybe they'll retroactively say, "Oh, these are now part of a Grand Prix." Who knows? They're pretty creative,
God.
you know what I mean? They don't really do like the drama style promotion, but they're pretty creative in what they do. I've really been enjoying the tournaments, select tournaments, just with the right people in them to be compelling as well as high level. The heavyweight tournament was less stacked in as far as like the top fighters than the welterweight one was, but a lot of people came up in parallel to those tournaments. That's part of the joy of while they're running them, there are people not in the tournament structure, but who are building up into contendership. So it's a lovely machine they have moving there. And I'm just enjoying everything they're doing, all the stuff that's going on. They just announced Cyborg. She's basically trying to clean out the whole division, the entire division. So Sinead Kavanaugh from SBG, she's got hands. She's a really tough cookie. So that's, I expect her to get taken down and beaten up, but best of luck to her. It's her turn to fight Cyborg. I just want to see Cyborg just fight everybody and just keep fighting and be really busy. Win or lose, just keep fighting. Get it in well before she's too old. And so this would be great. Another great fighter of her generation. Just, she's one of those great fighters, female fighters of her generation. And so get another fight in. And I like Kavanaugh can really punch. She can really take a punch. So if they stand on the feet, expect her to get kicked a lot, but she will throw hands and she throws back in combination. And it's going to be fun. And that division is shallow to where, it really comes down to who hasn't Cyborg fought yet. And if Leigh McCourt wins another fight, she's probably afterwards. She's still developing, but I think, she's been groomed to be a future challenger, one of the key challengers. But in the meantime, yes, Cyborg, just fight everybody, please.
You know what? Yeah. That would be cool. But between you and Jay Wolf, I don't know which one of y'all love Grand Prix tournaments more. But
probably
still,
Jay Wolf. He loves MMA more than I do. He's
of course. But yeah, as far as Chris Cyborg is concerned, you have to wonder about fresh competition. I mean, do you think that the Bellator women's featherweight division is starting to face that same problem that the UFC, that the almost dead and empty UFC featherweight division, might I add, has?
No, not necessarily, but it's a newer division, historically speaking, as far as in that company. And there are only so many women of the size where, and enough time since they've had the division to have it be stacked. But they're signing people. They've still got people there, but it's not like a numerically deep division. But that's okay. Sometimes that doesn't mean that they can't become a really powerful division. But Cyborg came in and beat the top competitors there at that weight. So,
well, she
don't have a one
blood in her first fight, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, just came right in. But she was coming off victory, so it wasn't like she was gifted anything. Now, Musasi was on a streak, and he actually fought Shlemenko before the title fight. I think that was the Sakara fight with Carvalho, but I think that was anchoring like the Italy card.
Of course.
But I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that because that meant I got to see Musasi fight Shlemenko at Mohegan-Sun. So that was a fun card. That was the night. Oh goodness, Warhorse Williams and oh gosh, why can't I remember? I was so distracted.
It was Heather Hardy.
and Heather Hardy, they had one of my favorite fights. My favorite all-time fight that I saw live was Vadim Nemkov, the future all-time great Vadim Nemkov chopping Liam McGeary's legs to pieces. That was the best thing I've ever seen live in any sport. That was the absolute tops. That was magical because I could see it coming. Okay, I'm like, don't get careless. But then he was just, McGeary is tough. He took hell in that fight. I felt bad for him on some level. After the fight, not while it was happening. I was cheering like crazy. Yeah, so that was good. But the Heather Hardy fight with Warhorse Williams, close second. That was phenomenal. And the crowd loved it. That was they got the biggest pop of the night. I mean, people were going crazy. They went to war. Fantastic fight.
Yeah, of course, because it basically, I mean, fights like that are the type of fights that made me wish Heather the Heat Hardy were to continue doing MMA, even though I know she quit because it was cutting into her boxing bookings. I just wish she continued to do MMA, you know? And as far as the women's competitors go, I got to ask this one question, and I know that we are short on time, but do you think that current free agent Megan Anderson, or for that matter, current free agent Paige Van Zandt, would be perfect fits in Bellator?
What weight does Paige fight at?
Paige fights at strawweight, I think.
125, I believe.
Oh,
that's fly.
I thought she was flyweight.
well,
did she move up to fly? I thought she was a straw. I can't remember.
She can fight at strawweight, but she's also flyweight as well. Megan Anderson is a featherweight, of course. And also,
if it was a 120, if she can do 125, yeah, bring her in because they have a good division, a really good division. But if as far as any weights below that, they do one-offs and stuff, but they don't like have a bracket or a belt or anything like that. But yeah, I'm sure they bring her in because maybe have her fight on her husband's fight with Masasi, have her fight on the card.
Oh yeah,
come on, Mr. Paige Van Zandt, an actual Paige Van Zandt. Come on now.
Exactly.
Why not? That's well worth the money because it's, not everyone gets to fight for a title. Not everyone comes in a position where they may be likely to be in contention at some point, but that's fine. It's still a fight promotion. It's compelling stories make people tune in. And you guys, you follow pro wrestling, so you understand. You're in our discussions, you're seeing it from the point of view of like when you say, well, you should do this, like what they should do to like build the biggest hype and get the most attention. So on that level, yeah, they'll absolutely bring her in. They can find just the right.
But what about Megan Anderson though?
Yeah, 145. Yeah, because like I was saying, they need people in there because you got to have people to put. You got to just have a texture, have some options, just like at welterweight and bantamweight, and featherweight, and now at middleweight. They have lots of options. They have lots of like fantastic matchups they can make, and let light heavyweight. So that builds overall enthusiasm. So they need more people. Bring her in. Why not?
Exactly.
She can fight people. She can fight people at a similar point in their careers and get some attention, put on a good fight, and tell her story a little more like they all want to on some level. Great.
So, T, before we head out, my last question to you is: so, just so we obviously, what other Bellator fights do you want to plug or say that you're looking forward to that we haven't discussed? Just quickly, give out some fights that have been announced that are official that you're looking forward to as well.
Well, all of those we talked about, and then the ones that they haven't booked yet. Because once the fights are locked in, I'm just like I'm paying attention to the rest of the texture and seeing what else.
So yeah, let's think of fights that have been officially announced. Not rumors or whatever in talks. What's been like that's on paper right now? Which fights? What other fights are you looking forward to, in general that Bellator is doing?
Oh man, so many. But like the most important fights to me are Fedor team fights. So Fedor's fight with Big Tim Johnson, that's like front and center now. And then both Tokov brothers are fighting. So the older of the brothers, Anatoly, is the one with the great record, who's fighting a Russian fighter. I'm not sure, I can't remember his name, but he has a good record. And then the younger Tokov brother is a lightweight. The older one's a middleweight. The younger brother, he's I think 5-1. He lost one fight, Bellator. He's fighting on the card. And then Kirill Sildnikov, known as Baby Fedor, he's on the card. He was no longer with the company. It was in one of those articles, but he's back. So now they have all of Fedor team because they have both Nemkov brothers, they have the Tokov brothers, they have Moldavsky, and now they've got baby Fedor back. So they got the whole team. So I love it. That's mostly what I look forward to. So Nemkov Anderson is the fight that I'm really getting focused on, thinking about how it'll play out. The Anglixis fight surprised me a little bit because Nemkov made a very, very fast adjustment. I was surprised he got rocked so early, but he made a very fast adjustment and was so dominant, even on the feet after that. After he took him down the first time, he owned the feet. And I love watching the different decisions he makes in shot selection. It reminds me of like the great K1 battles I used to love, you know, watching on online and seeing just the different combinations and just the subtle differences between the greatest and just people who do it well. And so that's what I feel like I'm seeing with Vadim Nemkov. Just a brilliant fighter, just so intellectually stimulating to watch, I would say.
Now, as far as the Tokov brothers coming up at Bellator 269, let me get that word out without fucking it up. You know, Vladimir Tokov is going to face off against Aymar Guih, Guih. Anatoly is going to take off against Muradov. Which one do you think is going to have the harder fight?
The younger brother, I would imagine. He's just much younger in his career as well as in his age. So, you know, the older brother has a better opponent, but he's also, in my opinion, one of the best middleweights in the world. Although he's not proven himself to the point where you would say, you know, he has more to prove. But from what he has been exposed to, he's shown in my mind, he's one of the best in the world. And this opponent isn't one who'll definitively prove that, but I would like to see him fight for a title. Because he already beat Shlemenko, who held the belt, who's a respected middleweight. And so, you know, he's up there. He's been inactive, so now it's time.
You're talking about the guy that Anatoly's facing off against, right?
No, well, I'm saying Anatoly himself. If he wins this, I'd like to see him fight for the title, not just based on this, but based on the fact that he was one of the top, in my mind, two or three contenders before the whole pandemic thing. But it depends. It depends. We got to see how good this other guy is. I haven't looked at his opponent's record, so I don't know if he's beaten any winning fighters himself, you know, to come in and fight a guy like Tokov. But Tokov's an excellent fighter, very dangerous in all positions. I mean, he's all of Fedor's proteges, the ones that are old enough and have been doing it long enough under his tutelage, and his coach's tutelage. You know, it's a gym. They've got Varnov just passed away, rest in peace. But so Fedor's the guy now, I guess, the head guy. But you know, these guys are studying at the highest level of martial arts, and so it's reflected in their performances. I expect Moldavsky to destroy Ryan Bader and become the proper champion, although I don't know how he'll do against Minakov or Fortune. Those are different kinds of matchups. But I'm looking forward to hopefully the winner of Minakov and Fortune fighting for the title next.
With that being said, we are out of time now. I want to give you an opportunity to plug you're doing a lot of shit. So plug away at everything that you're doing for Fight City, outside Fight City, boxing, whatever. The floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, so on the fightcity.com, I'm in a cooperative research project on the great Sam Langford. And I'm also doing, like, on my own time, I'm doing studies on the early era of boxing, the early gloved era, especially the beginning of the 1900s. And I'm in Boston, where this was one of the hotbeds of boxing at the time. And so a lot of all-time greats fought out of Boston. They weren't all from here, but a lot of them fought out of here. So, in fact, I just got a book on Georgie Dixon. I'll put the link to the book in the comments. I just got it today that I had ordered. And he's actually buried. He's Canadian, but he's buried here in Boston. And as is Sam Langford's buried in Cambridge, which adjoins Boston. So, yeah, so that's largely what I'm doing is researching that. But as far as Bellator, I'm still trying to follow it down to the whole exclusive roster in every fight. At least know something on it by fight time. So I'm going to have to look up some of the athletes on this card. But if I can't, you know, because the boxing thing is pretty involved. So we're going to have content coming on the fightcity.com. I'm going to have stuff on my YouTube channel, Random Acoustic Thoughts. And you can find me on Reddit at TeeptotheJunk with little dashes on either side, and on Twitter at TeeptotheJunk if you need me. But I'm mostly just going to disappear back into the archives until the Fedor fight. the research is grinding. It's not really exciting. It's exciting intellectually, but it's not exciting like the actual practice of it is just, it takes time. So I'm going back to research, going day by day through the newspapers, looking for things. And thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun. Hopefully I'm not rambling too much. I'm stretched pretty thin, had a long day. But it's great talking to you. And Andrew, I'd love to have you on my channel to talk about Japanese martial arts. Same with you, Gary. Let's do this thing.
Hey, we wouldn't mind. I'm pretty sure, Andrew, you wouldn't mind. And speaking of Andrew, you got some shit to do on MMAsucker.com, right?
Oh, of course, yeah. Whatever that is.
Nah, come on. Don't try and discredit them.
Yeah,
no. I'm just whenever I can get to them, it's just writing sucks. The worst part about writing is actually writing. That's what all writers say. That's what it really comes to.
I can say I enjoy being a fan.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
Go
Gary.
ahead and speak.
I was just saying one of the reasons I enjoy being a fan so much instead of trying to be the media. I put out stuff, but I'm not the media, because when it's fight time and everyone's doing their scrambling, I'm enjoying the fights. I'm watching them and then rewatching them and being a fan and getting the thrill of wondering who's going to win and if they turn out the way I want. I don't want to be thinking about, oh, do I use a hyphen here? Screw that. You guys can have that, but I love what you do. The people who are dedicated to it, but I love being a fan. And my research, my boxing content is more fulfilling than like sort of joining the scramble, but I love the coverage. I hope you're at the event. I want to meet you there. Maybe even if it's just to grab I don't drink anymore, so I'll get you a drink. I'll have a soda and just to hang out, even if at the event itself you're in press row and I'm up in the stands. I belong up in the stands. I'm too much of a knucklehead to be in press row. I'm sorry, man. You're not allowed to yell. You're not allowed to yell. I like to yell. I yell when they walk out. I yell when they do something spectacular.
I was at the show that Raymond Daniels, when he did the when he hit was it John De Jesus? I think it was in the nuts. I yelled at that because I was there, and the sound it made was absolutely disgusting.
I yell all the time, especially when it was like that. People were like, "Ooh," when Sergey Karatanov, Roy Nelson, right in the nuts. And I think I was there live when Congo got Minikov one really good time. Kupchak Congo got Minikov in the testicles. I'm like a bad luck charm for like low blows. Oh my god. But yeah, let's.
But with that being all said, yeah, of course, Chris, take us.
Yes,
hey, I want to say,
let's take the high road and get the hell out of here. But first,
I do have one thing.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I just have one last thing I want to say for fans that are interested in learning about the early era of boxing, which is incredibly rich. And like I was alluding to earlier, it was a very busy schedule. These guys were doing incredible work year to year, like literally a season of fighting rather than just I fought twice. I had 18 fights this year. But anyway, if you want to learn more about it on YouTube, search for Hardline Boxing Talk, which does a lot of statistical analysis and also like help familiarize you with the names of a lot of these great fighters, and also Scrapbook Boxing Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs, who's very knowledgeable and talks about a lot of history and shows a lot of great pictures from publications throughout history. So check those channels out. Look for my channel, Random Acoustic Thoughts. Subscribe to me. And thank you so much for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. You guys are cool as hell. I'll have you on. I'll reach out. We'll do a thing on mine.
Cool. Cool.
Can you quickly take us out?
Yeah. But first of all, Andrew, I want to ask you quickly. Do you think that acting is harder than writing or reporting?
Oh, I have no idea. It all depends on the day and what I have to do.
Understood. Let me go ahead and call it in. Let me go ahead and call it in because I know a lot of us are tired. But yeah, if you like what you saw, please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out the entirety of what we have via Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube, which I hope you're subscribed to, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get the We Are Rising podcast from. Don't forget to follow my well, actually, not really but the Focus Fights podcast, Focus Fights Audio. It's available on all forms of podcast providers if you so choose. If you want to check out anything that Bellator has upcoming, including the 4 fight cards they have coming up this weekend in Moscow, Russia, on my 29th birthday, no less, in Dublin, Ireland. On November 12th, you're going to have Chris Cyborg versus Sinead KO Kavanaugh for the Bellator Women's Featherweight Championship of the World. And on December 3rd, at the Mohegan Sun Arena in Uncasville, Connecticut, you're going to have Sergio the Phenom Pettis versus the man who's looking to become Gucci 2 belts 2 times, Kyoji Horiguchi. Oh, and of course, Queeley versus Pitbull in Dublin on my 29th birthday for the Bellator lightweight title. But still, if you want to check out all that stuff, be sure to check out the Showtime Sports YouTube channels and Facebook and Twitter pages. Be sure to check out Bellator on social media at Bellator MMA, and be sure to follow along with all the action that they got on their terms. But of course, if you want to check out everything that we got, I already mentioned it to y'all. So I guess all I got to say left is, if you don't like what you saw, then I guess it would be best for me to tell you, the idiotic fight fans who probably just don't know what the hell they're talking about, to hold on one second. Come on, you damn piece of
Shut your bum ass up, man.
And for those of y'all that are enjoying what we got, you know, you can follow us respectively on Twitter. I'm at Chris Gary 92. Andrew is at TeeptotheJunk. No, wait, Andrew is at ABenger1. TeeptotheJunk is who you should follow. But still, though, we thank y'all for joining us. We thank y'all for tuning in to another exciting edition of the We Are Rising podcast. Be safe, keep your hands up at all times, take care of yourself and each other. And as always, and I'm finally able to jot this down right, as the great Lenny Hart always likes to say, and with that, we say peace out. Talk to y'all later. We done.